So everybody, welcome to our 5th Coaching Network Talk. We're happy to have none other than Paula Prober as our speaker tonight. Many of us in InterGifted know Paula from her blog, Your Rainforest Mind, which by now has quite a large following. And I feel really lucky tonight that we get to spend a little time with the woman behind this great movement. So Paula's going to share with us just a little bit about her journey to becoming a welcomed leader and a really holistic voice in the field of gifted support. She'll be sharing a couple of client stories, and she'll be taking some questions about her newly released book, which is appropriately called Your Gifted Mind, or Your Rainforest Mind, a guide to the well-being of gifted adults and youth. So Paula isn't a coach in our coaching network, as our coaching network talks usually are hosted by one of our coaches, but she has served as a consultant and she does a lot to support us behind the scenes. So we're really glad to have her here and very thankful for her support, all her support for InterGifted. So without further ado, I will present you Paula.
Why, thank you. Thank you, Jen. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here and a little nervous, but once I get started, I think I'll calm down. It's nice to see all of you. I have done webinars before, but not where you could be seen. You know, I just had my slides up there. I didn't see any participants. They couldn't see me. It was kind of good that way. So it's a little unusual for me to be so visible, but I will get used to that too. So I'm a counselor and a consultant. And for years, I've worked with parents of gifted kids and also in a private counseling practice. And as Jen said, I write the blog. I've been writing the blog for about 2 years, the Your Rainforest Mind blog. And recently, I have the book Your Rainforest Mind, a guide to the well-being of gifted adults and youth. And I'm just, as I'm talking, I'm thinking, okay, so I have some slides and I'm going to experiment with doing that share screen thing. And so let me just see if I can get that to work. Let's see, show view slides. Slideshow. Okay, so there we go. So that's the book. So there's the book, and all right, there's a little bit about me. Okay, so slide, we'll see if I can get that to work. But anyway, what I want to do today is share a bit of my background so you can see how I got where I am today. And then I'm going to share a couple of cases of clients that I've worked with. And I'm doing that in a kind of an unusual way. I'm going to be reading a monologue that I've written that is a compilation of things that clients have said to me. And what I'd like to do is give you that experience of this is what gifted people have to say and this is what they feel, and then have you respond with your thoughts and your feelings and your questions and your reactions. I thought that might be a better way to do it than just describing these clients to you. So I will be doing that too today. And I do want this to be interactive. It's kind of, it's tricky for me to just be doing all the talking. So if you do have something to say, I'd really be happy to hear from you. And I like the idea of you sharing ideas with each other as well, because you have so much to contribute and you know so much about this topic. So I hope that you will speak up and share your thoughts and ideas too. Okay. So I started in this field back in the 1970s, and I'm guessing as I look at you, you know, some of you were maybe not even born at that time, right? And so I was a teacher in the 70s, and I was an elementary school teacher, and I taught 6th grade science and language arts for 3 years. But in that time, I had some colleagues who said to me, the way I taught would be good for gifted kids. And I said, at the time, I said, well, what's a gifted kid? You know? And so I really had no exposure to gifted children, or I had never been in a gifted program myself. And I really didn't know what they were talking about. So, but I was curious, and I looked into it, and it turned out that my teaching style was very open-ended, and I did a lot of projects with kids, and they were all over the they were all over the room working on their projects and working in small groups. And a lot of the tools that I used were just non-traditional. And so that was why I think people noticed that, and they said, oh, you'd be good with teaching with gifted kids. And so so I checked into that. And at the time, I moved to Pennsylvania in the US, and they had just passed a law that all gifted children needed to be identified and served in the public schools. And these jobs opened up for teachers of the gifted, and they had these school districts had pull-out programs, which were, most of you probably know, where the kids are pulled out of the regular classroom, and they're in smaller groups, and they're taught by a teacher who has some experience and some training in working with gifted kids. And so that's what I got to do, and I got this job in a middle school in a little town in Pennsylvania, and I worked with gifted kids for, it was 2.5 hours a week, not very long, but it was at least something. And I created the curriculum based on what their interests were, and they did special independent projects. They got to be with each other and support each other, and it was wonderful. And I loved the job, and I loved the kids. And interestingly, because of Facebook, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, I got contacted by a couple of those kids who are now in their late 40s. And they're, I still picture them 11 years old, but they're adults now somehow. and in fact, 2 of them got in touch with me today to tell me that they're excited about the book, and they're going to be buying the book. And it's just wonderful. So I had this great experience I was with those kids for 5 years. The 5th graders I had through 8th grade, and it was wonderful. So I did that in my 20s, and then when I was 29, I moved to Oregon and got a similar kind of job in a pull-out program with kids in grades 1 through 5. So I had then the experience of working with gifted kids, grades 1 through 8, for those years in my 20s, basically, and in my early 30s. And then I started doing teacher training. There were a couple of teacher training programs in Oregon where I live, where they're helping regular classroom teachers understand what to do with gifted kids in the classroom. And so I started doing some of that training, and then I started doing classes for parents of gifted kids, and specifically focusing on the social emotional needs of the kids. And I did that through a couple of the universities in Oregon. Then when I was 39, I decided to leave education and get a counseling degree. And I had been a client in counseling for a few years by then, and I loved it. And I just, the whole mental health world was really important to me, and everything I read was about mental health and spirituality and inner work. And, that's kind of been my focus for probably most of my life. And so I decided to get a counseling degree when I was 39. And then I worked in a mental health agency for a few years, and then started a private practice. And then very shortly after I started the practice, it kind of occurred to me that, that I knew what gifted people were like, and I knew that they had special counseling needs and special mental health needs. And so I decided to specialize in working with gifted clients, and that's what I've done since then, and it's been great. And it's an ideal line of work for somebody who's introverted and loves to get to know people deeply and intimately, and it's such an honor to be with people and have them share their pain and vulnerability, and it's just work that I love. And I get to be with gifted people all day. It's like, oh, if you want to, find a way to hang out with gifted people, this is one way to do it. It's a it's been a great career choice for me. And also being an introvert, it's really helpful to just be with, you can have really deep relationships, but it's one person at a time. And that's been great too. So it's a good choice if you're an introverted, gifted person. And then somewhere along the lines there, I got the idea of the rainforest analogy. And I think that came to me somewhere, maybe when I was teaching, because it felt like, people are so uncomfortable with the label, and it's hard to know, what does it mean to be gifted? And so I thought, how can I explain this to people? Not only so that the gifted people will feel more comfortable with understanding themselves, but so that other people will understand better. And I just felt like the idea of people as ecosystems. So some people could be meadows, and some people could be deserts, and some people could be rainforests. And the people who are the rainforests are the most complicated ones. That's the rainforest is the most complex ecosystem, and it's not a better ecosystem. They're all beautiful. All the ecosystems are necessary and beautiful. It's just that the rainforest is the most complex, and it's intense, and it's dense and full of life and death and transformation, and it just felt like a perfect way to describe what gifted people are like. And then if you're uncomfortable with using the label gifted, you can describe it to people as, well, I have this rainforest mind, and it's not any better than any other mind, but it's just, it's intense and full of life. So there's that. Then 2 years ago, I started blogging, and I'm just having a great time with blogging. It's just been so much fun. It feels like it's there's something about the blogging voice that is really comes naturally to me. At least, people have different ways of writing, and I'm not a creative writer, and I'm not I'm not a great, I couldn't write fiction, or I couldn't write novels, but there's something about being able to just be natural in a blogging voice came pretty easily to me, and was fun. And I still love it. And I love the idea of getting this information out beyond my little counseling practice to people all over the world, and then getting feedback. It's been great, to get the comments from people and get feedback about how much I'm able to help people. So there's that. Okay. Then, and then just for those of you who are thinking about blogging, there's also, what's interesting is I started blogging, and then people from the Gifted Homeschoolers Forum saw my blog, and they asked me about writing a book for them. And that was one of those, blog to book kind of stories. And I had already started writing something. So I already had a manuscript, and I had edited it a little bit, and I sent them the manuscript, and they liked it. And so they published it. And that's the story of how I got the book out. And that's just recently the book has been published. Okay. So what I want to do now is share a little bit about the book with you, and then share something about my clients. So I'm going to try to get back to the slides. Okay. Okay, so that one we've done. All right. So what I have in the book is the quiz, Do You Have a Rainforest Mind? And what's interesting is I see the pictures are covering some of the slide. I don't know. Jen, do you know, can you see the whole slide?
Yeah, you'll be able to. On the recording, it shows up as your screen.
Okay.
Sometimes a little band of videos, and sometimes not at all. But in any case, you'll be able to see on the recording.
Okay, so the first slide, the question is, do you have a rainforest mind? And take my highly unscientific quiz to find out. All right, so I'm going to give you some sample questions, and you can see if you think you fit the rainforest mind diagnosis. Okay, so the first question is, do people tell you to lighten up when you're just trying to enlighten them? The second question is, do you wonder how you can feel like not enough and too much at the same time? The third question, do you spend hours looking for the exact word, the smoothest texture, the right note, the perfect gift, finest color, most meaningful discussion, fairest solution, and deepest connection? Have you called yourself ADHD because you're easily distracted by new ideas and intricate cobwebs, or OCD because you alphabetize your home library or color code your sweaters, or bipolar because you go from ecstasy to despair in 5 minutes? Are you uncomfortable with the label gifted and sure that if you used the word as a descriptor of people with some sort of advanced intelligence, which you wouldn't because it's so offensive, but if you did, it certainly wouldn't apply to you? So I'm wondering if any of those questions, if any of you can relate to those questions. And does anyone, I mean, I'll take a break right now. Does anyone have anything to say just about the quiz questions? Any thoughts or any feelings? I just got a message on my screen that said my internet connection is unstable. I hope that doesn't mean I disappear. Okay.
No, it's okay. We can hear you, but I did notice when you share your screen, it does have a little bit of a lag time, but it's okay.
Is it okay? All
Yeah.
right. Because I don't need to show the slides.
Yeah. So
Okay.
The 2 comments so far are 100% me and seriously.
Okay. And in the book, there are 24 questions that, help you determine whether you have a rainforest mind or not. And, and I'm sure you all do. So, but the quiz is another way to help people see themselves. If it's hard to describe what it means to be gifted, you've got these questions, and I've had people share them with their partners as a way to help their partners understand them. And it's a humorous way so that people don't feel so offended or so uncomfortable with it. But I remember a client who showed it to her partner, and they both felt so much relief by using the quiz as a way to talk about the issues, because the quiz, as you can see, it talks a little bit about perfectionism in the quiz, and I tried to get many of the issues in those questions. So anyway, so that's the first part of the book.
I'm just going to interrupt you because we have another comment, which is cute. I've been there. All but the last apply to me, but after seriously offending so many people, I now staunchly insist I have the right to be gifted.
Yay! Yeah.
And then another, same thing. I'm in there with you. I'm in there with you. The last doesn't apply to me either.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because when I thought about this presentation and I thought about presenting to you all, I wondered about that last one, because I feel like many of you have gotten to the place of, I get it. I'm gifted, and I can say it, and I can feel good about it. And so it's funny. I debated whether or not to add that question in there, but I'm guessing that you all have. It's been a process to get to the place where you've been able to say, I'm gifted and proud, and I can use the word to describe myself. But just so you know, so many people that I see just don't see themselves that way. And so that's why that question is there. But I'm really glad to hear that some of you have gotten there and are understand that that's who you are. So that's great. Okay. Let me see. I just want to show you what some of the topics are that are covered in the book, and these are the these are the different chapter topics, and these are the issues that come up with every client that I have pretty much consistently. These are the things they're concerned about: their sensitivities, the empathy, the intensity. So many of them feel like they want to do something about improving the world and feel guilty that they're not doing enough to make a difference in the world. There's a lot of perfectionism, and in the book I explain the different types of perfectionism. So many of these people that I see have multi-potentiality, so there are all these interests and they don't know what to do career-wise because they're interested in so many different things. there's also the issue of it's hard to make it. I put it in with multi-potentiality, the idea of how difficult it is to make decisions. How, you think, well, if I were smart, I would know the answer, or I would be able to choose something, or be able to decide what I need to do. But I think having so many ideas and thinking so deeply, decision making is actually very difficult. And I use the example of how people are accused of flip-flopping and not being consistent, and how that's a negative thing. And I'll talk to them about, well, actually people who aren't as complicated, get the answer right away. It's black or white. It's really simple to have an answer, because you can't think of that many possibilities. Anyway, so that's the whole issue of decision making. And then the loneliness, lots of gifted people that I know are having a hard time finding other gifted people. There's a chapter on schooling, which is often, what's the word I want? Just can be a real painful experience for gifted people, and there can be bullying from other kids. There can be sometimes bullying from teachers. Sometimes teachers are uncomfortable with the gifted kids. So there's a chapter on that. And then the last chapter is authenticity, creativity, and spirituality, which I realized when I wrote it was a little crazy to put all of that in one chapter, and 5 pages on all of those topics. But I explain in the book that I'm taking a little strand of all of those things and just applying them to being a gifted person. So those are the chapters in the book. Let's see. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is I decided how, I thought, okay, how am I going to explain clients to the people in the seminar? And I thought, well, one way to do it is to share with you the words of some of my clients in what I'm calling a monologue. And so I'm going to first read to you some of the words of a teenage boy client. And this is actually a compilation of teenage boys, teenage girls, what they tell me in my counseling practice. And what I'd like you to do is listen to it and maybe close your eyes and think about yourself as a teenager and whether these were some of the experiences that you had at that age. And then that's when I want to open up the discussion to your comments and questions and your feelings and what it was like for you as a teenager. And then after that, I'm going to read another monologue that is a compilation of things the adult clients have said to me. And then we can talk about that. So I'm just checking the time. Okay, so I'm going to start this one, and this is I'm calling this teenage boy Justin. Okay, and so what I want you to do is think about how this applies to you. So hey, I'm Justin. I'm in counseling because my parents are worried. I don't have any real friends, and I spend a lot of time in my room on the computer. My grades are dropping. I'm actually failing in a couple classes. They're afraid I'm depressed, maybe even suicidal. My parents are right to be concerned. I don't know what's wrong, but I've been kind of a mess ever since I can remember. And lately I've been wondering, what's the point? I remember being in kindergarten, and I tried to talk with the other kids, about stuff I've read, like the demise of the dinosaurs, or how volcanoes work. Or I'd want to show them the intricacies of the Lego contraptions I built. They just look at me like I was from another planet and go play in the sandbox. And I'd wonder, what's wrong with me? What am I missing? How could they not love dinosaurs? How could they not love reading? And then my kindergarten teacher kept teaching about colors and shapes and counting to 10. And I'm thinking, what about multiplication? What's wrong with me? I was supposed to sit still and fill in the blanks on the worksheets when what I wanted was to know the size of the universe. It's been that way for years. Sitting in a classroom, eager to learn something, anything, and hearing the same song over and over and over. I'm so disappointed in people, in teachers. I stopped doing the homework in some of my classes, and that's why my grades are so bad. I just don't see the point of repeating something I already know. People tell me to just do it, but it's torture. And then there are the papers to write. Either I do so much research that I can't possibly put it all in a 5-page paper, so I never hand anything in, or I know what I write won't be good enough, so I don't even start. They say I'm lazy. Am I lazy? There is one teacher, though, Mr. Gray. He keeps me in high school. He loves his subject, English literature, and he loves my curiosity and questions. He started a philosophy club where we could talk about film, literature, politics, anything. I'm usually the only one who shows up, but he's always there, getting my mind working hard, and it gives me hope, makes life worth living. Someone who loves thinking outside the box, someone who isn't intimidated or offended or annoyed by my insatiable appetite for learning, someone who makes me stretch my brain. I'm really grateful for Mr. Gray. Hey, I used to be very emotional. I used to cry a lot, and my parents called me dramatic. I'm also very sensitive to noise, textures, and smells. I didn't like birthday parties because they were so chaotic. I could tell my parents were extremely uncomfortable with this, and that as a boy, I was supposed to suck it up. But I cared deeply about things and was sad when I could see other kids getting hurt. I'm not emotional or sensitive anymore. No one knows how I feel. Funny, sometimes now people want me to tell them what I'm feeling. Most of the time, I have no idea. I worry a lot. I worry about global warming, world hunger, poverty, racism. What can I do that will make a difference? Why am I here? What's the meaning of life? My brain never stops. It's exhausting. Oh yeah, and sometimes I get premonitions about stuff that happens later. Now that's spooky. You know, I just want someone my age to care, to think with me, to ask questions. I feel like such a freak. Our symphonic band went on a field trip to San Francisco. I was so excited to see the city, the art museums, and the culture. All the other kids wanted to do was go to the mall. The mall, like they've never seen a frickin' mall. I couldn't stand it, and I desperately wanted to leave the group, but I didn't want to create a scene, so I kept my mouth shut. People think I'm moody and disagreeable, but I'm really just incredibly tired of trying to fit in and feeling like a fool. I just want to be normal. I just want to have friends. I'm so lonely. I guess I should confess that I feel tremendous anxiety when someone asks me to do something I've never done before and don't know if I can do it well and fast and the best. You know, like sports, for instance. I avoid sports at all costs. And I quit piano because you have to practice to get good at it. I'm used to being the best and getting approval for it, and I'm afraid that I'm not really as smart as everyone says. So I don't take any unnecessary risks. I need to help people. I can't stand to see people suffer. And at the same time, I'm not proud of my record. There have been too many times when I watch someone get harassed at school and I haven't done anything. I'm torn, you know. I want to be liked, to be part of the group, to not be the school geek, but I leave school hating myself when I'm a coward. Someone is hurt and I could have helped. Keeps me awake nights. I feel their suffering in my heart. People try and help me, and I appreciate it, but it's mostly inadequate. They come up with quick fixes and easy answers. I try and tell them gently that it's not that simple. It's never that simple. But they don't get it. Sometimes the only thing I find soothing is my dog and a walk in the woods. I feel a deep kinship with nature and sense of a connection with trees and the wind. I still cry at a perfect sunset. I can't wait to get to college. Maybe there will be kids there I can relate to who will accept me. Or maybe there'll be a professor in the music department who can give me the feedback I'm looking for. See, I'm in these bands at school and I get these awards, but they're meaningless, you know? I don't deserve them. I make all these mistakes that no one seems to notice. I don't get it. They tell me I'm the best trumpet player they've heard in years, but I know how much better I could sound. What I play is crap and they don't hear it. Then again, I'm scared to death to go to college. I'm not sure what I'd do if I were put in a class with really smart kids. What if the work is too hard? What if I don't have all the answers? What'll I do then? Who am I? And how do I study for a test? I haven't really had to crack a book yet. What if I can't get the answers fast? And what will I major in? I have so many interests. They say I can do anything I want, like that's a great thing. But all I feel is pressure and anxiety. How do I choose just one thing? What if I'm not really so smart and I've just been able to fake it all this time? Maybe I won't go to college. They say I'm gifted, but I don't know. It sure doesn't feel like a gift to me. So that's Justin. Now I want to hear your comments. So unmute yourself. I don't know exactly how to do it, Jen. But can you talk about your feelings as you've heard that, how it's similar to you, how it's different from you, what that was like to hear?
Yeah, so everybody on the call, just to know, you can unmute yourself on the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and you're welcome to ask questions or send them in the chat.
And make comments about how it felt.
Yeah. Well, I'll start. It makes me cry. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to listen to in a way. Brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, kind of got a little emotional feeling for me, just because not everything perfectly applies. But I just recognized and felt so many of the things from my past. So.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, the one word that sticks, and after all this, is loneliness. The loneliness was there for all my life until way past the teenage years. I was past 40 before I actually met somebody I could talk to.
I didn't quite get everything that you said.
Sorry?
It's a kind of a bad connection.
Yeah. The key word for me was loneliness. Loneliness, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You perfectly described my childhood there. And despite after everything I read about giftedness, about the more psychological aspects of it and the more ways to deal with it now as an adult, I think this was the first time that someone really described what it was like for me to grow up. So yeah, that was very emotional, but beautiful. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It gives me a really weird feeling in the stomach when I hear about the story. And I think at the same time, the teenager that you described is really reflective about himself. Really, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to put it in words like that. I just knew that something was wrong, or something didn't feel the way it should. Something was very tense. I couldn't make sense of it. And I think it's really impressive the way this all that you've been reading to us has been formulated.
Well, and just so you know, this is what I read were ideas that different kids have told me. So it wasn't that this one boy was really insightful about himself.
Okay, yeah. But still, it does make does make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of what the other said is the combination of the different things that kind of add up, describing what you go through.
Yeah. Anybody else?
It was very emotional for me as well. I identified a lot more with the second half of the thing, but I felt like the first half was very much my brother. So it was kind of an interesting combination of both of us. And I was very much more the perfectionist, felt such pressure, and just wanted to get 100 on everything and not really learn. I just wanted to be perfect in the eyes of my teachers or anyone. And my brother was more the kind of like, this is pointless. I'm not going to do it if I don't see the value in it. More of that. So yeah, it was an interesting combination.
And I've seen both of those two, or those two different dynamics in the kids that I see. The pressure, the kids who put so much pressure on themselves to get the good grades all the time because they don't want to disappoint their parents or their teachers, or they have been told that they're so smart that they need to always perform at a high level. And then often the parents who bring the kids that come to therapy are often the ones who are not getting good grades in school because they're identified, as, oh no, my kid is flunking out, and how could that be? Because she's so smart, so those are the ones who often I see in therapy. But I've also seen other ones who just are so anxious all the time because they have to get the A+. And that pressure starts early, I think. I think you internalize that pressure at a very early age. What else? What other thoughts or experiences did you relate to?
I don't know if you can hear me without using my mic. My brother and I were always very close in age, and I surpassed him in a lot of our schooling. We were homeschooled. With that, it drove a wedge between us whenever my giftedness showed. It made it so that I was more advanced than him. So there were many times that I would choose my relationship with him over having good grades, over having a higher GPA. And I really regret that looking back, because we missed out on opportunities to get past those things. And those things are still issues now, because I decided that I didn't want to be exceptional so I could be friends with him.
I'm guessing others of you can relate to that one too. The dumbing yourself down idea, the not being able to be as smart as you are, or because somebody's uncomfortable or somebody feels threatened. What else?
I find the nature piece interesting. Do you find that pretty much across the board? Like, do most gifted people feel that connection with nature?
I find that very common. Not everyone, certainly not everyone, but it keeps coming up over and over again. That getting out into nature is a huge. It's for peace, a sense of peace or relaxation, but often a deeper spirituality, that they find some kind of sense of spirituality in nature. That's really common. Yeah. Does that apply to you? Is that your?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And actually, I'm working with Jen to create a program because I've been doing psychotherapy and I need to get out of it. And like as a psychotherapist, and so I'm really curious about what value that could bring to gifted people's lives, because my connection with nature is very deep, and it's a huge. You'll notice I'm sitting outside, and so I'm just wondering if there would be enough interest to really, because the gifted population is limited, and then if how much of that limited population is really drawn to nature, and if that's something that there's enough people that that's something I could focus on and bring value to people.
Totally. I think I say yes, do it. Because I think you get enough people, and even people who are sort of on the fence, that would introduce them to that And that sense of loneliness that people feel, if they get out.
That's what I was going to say, totally.
Yeah, getting out into nature.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's been one of the best things for me is in dealing with that loneliness is the connection with nature and the idea that nature is there calling us to come and connect. It has really helped me a lot with that. So, and that it doesn't, because I think I kind of have in my head, and you get told that you're supposed to be an extrovert and hang out with people and want to be around people. And when you're introverted gifted, I think you can easily pathologize yourself and say, well, I should be hanging out with people. I'm lonely. I should be hanging out with people. What's wrong with me? And I've found that it doesn't have to be people. You just need connection. And if you can get that deep connection with animals and with nature, it helps with that, just that existential loneliness, I think, for me anyway.
Yes. I well, just so you know, I see many people where that's the case.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I would also add to the discussion, one of the things that kind of didn't come out in your profile that I really did suffer with is I was really overwhelmed by the social aspect of school. So it wasn't just because I didn't really struggle at all with the academic aspect. That was just something I did, and I did the worksheets fast, and I didn't really think too much about it. I mean, I thought I was bored, but I didn't think much else about it because I could just do everything really quickly. But it was the social aspect, and I felt the pressure to be extroverted, you know, to be around people, to interest myself in people, and that was really, really overwhelming. I wish I could have had, you know, like sometimes they do in Germany or in other places, school in nature, where you're out in nature and you're sort of just in a small group of kids and you're out in nature and that's how you learn. That would have been perfect for me because being inside a building and being with people when you're expected to enjoy that social thing, and I didn't, that was very, very difficult. So we have a couple other comments here that are interesting. So one of our participants says she remembers wanting to be an adult from the time she was 6. So I'll read from her. I was frustrated with the black and white thinking, the trivial things people would get upset about, and the lack of stimulation. I knew there was a world out there with so many more interesting experiences to be had if I was just able to grow up faster. But unfortunately, after becoming an adult, I realized people still expect things to be done the right way, and people shame me for being too much in the workplace. I wish they would realize that I'm trying to raise the bar or get them to test what they believe to make sure it's solid. I find people are overwhelmed with the idea of change, but the reason us gifted folks excel is because we accept the world is always changing, and therefore there is always room for a new idea. Well said.
Yeah, yes, that's great. Thanks. Are there any other comments, Jen, that you want to read?
We have a couple others that are from before, but I'll bring them up at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody else have any other thoughts about the teenage years or want to share your experience?
Yes, we might have a new message. Let's see. No. Okay. I would add just one thing from my own self. When you were reading, the thing that made me so emotional was when you said, "No one knows how I feel." I think that kind of described a lot of my feelings as a kid. Yeah. And, yeah. I'm curious to hear the adult profile because, you know, that's what I've worked really hard on as an adult, to be able to tell people how I feel, identify it first myself, and then be able to tell people how I feel and feel understood as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read the adult.
Great.
The one thing that might be, let's see, I don't know. One thing that the couple of you that you've gotten, or maybe many of you have gotten to the place where you're able to identify yourselves as gifted. So this might be interesting for you to hear, because the people that I see, most of them will say, you know, in fact, they'll come to me for counseling and they know that I work with gifted clients, and they'll say, well, I'm not gifted, but I related to your description of what you do. Or they'll say, I relate to the characteristics of the rainforest mind. I'm not gifted, but could I see you anyway, right? And then they'll start talking about themselves, and I'll say, well, I think maybe you are gifted, and then I'll explain it to them. So this profile of the adult is the typical person that I see. And so you will hear repeatedly, this is a woman, she will say, I'm not gifted, but, okay, so just so you know, just preparing you for that. So she starts off, and I'm calling her Virginia, and she says, first of all, just so you know, I'm not gifted. I don't even like the word. What does it really mean? Isn't everyone gifted in some way? Look, it never really did me any good to be labeled gifted when I was a kid. Yeah, they tested me for the gifted program in school, but I just got bullied. And I spent a lot of time waiting for kids to catch up, waiting for the teacher to teach something I didn't know, waiting to find a friend who could keep up with me, who could understand me. I'm still waiting for that friend. I'm not gifted. I didn't get great grades in school. I wasn't the valedictorian. I started failing classes in high school. Sure, I got good test scores, 99 percentile, blah, 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 but the tests were easy. Don't gifted people get A's all the time? I didn't always get A's. I'm not gifted. I haven't won the Nobel Prize. I haven't won any prize. Well, there was the spelling bee in 3rd grade. Does that count? I'm just a regular person. True, they called me a geek, a nerd, a show-off, a know-it-all. But geez, I don't know it all. Far from it. I'd love to know it all. But that's impossible. I'd love to know it all. I want to learn everything about everything. I've got all this unbridled enthusiasm about learning stuff. People find it very annoying. Why can't I just be satisfied with a good football game or binge watching The Bachelor on TV? I'm not gifted. I worry all the time. Am I saying the right thing, doing the right thing? I can't sleep at night because there's so much rumination, so many thoughts in so many different directions. I can't turn off my brain. Surely if I were smart, I'd be able to stop worrying and figure things out. I'd be able to meditate easily and find enlightenment. But no, there's so much thinking. They called me an overthinker when I was 5. I'm still overthinking. Okay, and I'm not gifted. I can't make decisions. There are always so many variables and variables within variables. I can't even decide what color to paint the living room. I've painted it 12 times in the past 4 years and it still isn't right. And well, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm overwhelmed by the number of interests I have. I changed majors 4 times in college and it took 7 years to graduate. Don't gifted people know what they know? And don't they take clear, confident action? Aren't they all prodigies and have a clear direction from the time they're born? That's not me. I'm not gifted. I tend to go from job to job, still trying to find my path. I learn a job in about 2 years or less, and then I get bored and want to try something new. I have a resume that's all over the place. Coworkers aren't very fond of me either. I get frustrated at meetings while I'm waiting for them to figure out what I told them at the beginning of the meeting or 2 months ago. I'm not patient. I'm not a good team player. Not very gifted, if you ask me. See, I'm telling you, I'm not gifted. Anyway, it's too much responsibility. I mean, if I were gifted, wouldn't I have to change the world? Like Elon Musk, I'd have to build electric cars, send rockets to the International Space Station, and run a solar electric company all at the same time. I'm just a mom raising a kid who is still throwing tantrums, and she's 8 years old. She's so sensitive and so emotional. See, I'm a failing parent at that. Oh boy, I am so not gifted. Look, I'm not gifted. I just have very high standards and expectations and think everyone ought to live up to them. No biggie. It's important to keep raising the bar, don't you think? How else will civilization evolve? Of course, I probably shouldn't take an hour to write a 3-sentence email. Yeah, sure. That might be a little excessive. People call me OCD, retentive and, judgmental, but still, I have standards and morals and ethics and expectations and that's very important to me. Okay, do I sound intense? I may be talking fast, but you know what? I'm actually cranking back my intensity right now. I'm not talking as quickly as I'm thinking, just so you know. But even though I'm not gifted, I may fit some of the characteristics of the rainforest mind. I can relate to that analogy. My brain does feel like a jungle. I'm complicated, sensitive, colorful, maybe creative, overwhelming for sure, dense, yeah. And you know, I've definitely run into chainsaws in my life. People have clearly wanted me to be cut down and turned into something that I'm not. That's for certain. Sad but true. Not that I'm complaining. I'm grateful for this life and for what I've got. I'm very grateful. It's just that sometimes those chainsaws, sometimes they're just too much. And if I were gifted, which I'm not, but if I were, I want to send the gift back to the manufacturer for a refund, unwrap the gift, send it back. Yeah, but I'm not gifted. Okay. So, thank you. What are your thoughts? What do you relate to in that?
All right, here we have lots of comments. Okay, so the first comment is my exact comment, waiting. That is the key word that I would describe. So from one of our participants, waiting, that really resonates. Waiting for someone to tell me something I don't already know. After university, I was so disappointed that it never got difficult, waiting for other people to catch up. That's such a relief to just be able to say it, to be allowed to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then here, waiting, always, overthinking, always. Yep, getting bored a lot, yes. Frustration with people taking so much time to figure things out that I pointed out a long time ago, yes. Mm-hmm. From another participant, too close for comfort. Mm-hmm. Another, everything. Mm-hmm. Another, my overwhelming ability to stay in my heart while listening, while changing a diaper and nursing my youngest. Mm-hmm. The feeling it doesn't shut off. Another, oh my gosh, the email thing. Oh, this is another comment that's not funny. Hold on, I think I didn't understand this. Okay, I'm skipping that one because I don't understand it. And yes, and all the chainsaws. I'm continually surprised by all the aggression people feel towards me. Can they not perceive my heart? Another, I'm in tears. You guys are gonna make me cry. Yeah. I'm in tears. I have a sensitive tantrum throwing 8-year-old, a failing parent, and I want to do all the things. I want to do all the things and the unbridled interest and enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for all the comments. Yeah. What else? Does anybody want to speak up and say anything?
So Jen, that email comment was mine, which is very ironic because I was just, what I mean was when you said how it takes so long to write an email, I was like, oh, I do that all the time. It takes me to write an email. And then I'm like, how do I write that in a comment? How do I explain it? And then I write the comment and it's like not really understandable. So anyway, that's slightly embarrassing but funny, but I'm, anyway, that was just a good illustration.
Yes, many of us will relate to that. Yeah. So you're not alone. It's like, I gotta write the perfect comment, right? I have to write it exactly so I'll be understood. I mean, some of it is that whole being misunderstood.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have others chiming in to say, yes, me too, Joe, I get it. Yeah. And another comment, not being able to sleep because there are so many possibilities up there that want to be explored first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I related to pretty much everything, but the one line is, I want to learn everything about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And adulthood has been very disappointing to me because I've had to face reality. And getting a PhD, I now see that no one can know everything about even one thing. And it's like, there's so many infinite things to learn, and that's good, but there's just not enough time, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. And so many of these things you can't really tell other people who aren't rainforest minded, because they won't understand that. But it's so common for the gifted people to want to learn everything about everything. And they're so fascinated by learning. And then they're, and it's just, what's so great about Jen starting this website, starting InterGifted, is that, oh my God, finally, you have a place where you can say these things, and people will nod their heads and smile instead of looking at you like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you just like watching TV? Why can't you just, right, be happy? Why can't you just be satisfied? So yeah, so it's great that you have a place where you can be yourself, and people will all nod their heads and smile and understand. Yeah. What else? What other feelings, comments?
This one's cute. So one of our participants just got your book, just right now, got your book in the mail. You can see in her video. And she says, how appropriate. Helps me to smile and swallow down my tears. Very emotional. So from somebody else here, this continual sense that I'm not being as helpful or as useful as I could be.
Yeah, well, the pressure, maybe the pressure of, okay, if I'm gifted, that means I have to do something important.
Yeah. I know from my work with clients all these years, that's one of the big things that comes up. It's just, I'm not living up to my potential. I'm not living up to my potential. And I think that applies both in sort of professional pursuits, or even like being a perfect mom or whatever. But also this desire to know. I mean, I know I struggle with the fear of death. Even thinking about if I die at 80, or 90 or 100, if I live a really long life, it's still not long enough, because I have so much stuff I want to know before I die. And then of course it goes, does it even really matter? Because if after you die, there's nothing that, and so then the whole thing goes on, and then it becomes an absurd thought exercise. But at the same time, there's this pressure, like, I got to get it all done today because there's so much, and 50 more years or whatever, that's not enough. That feeling of pressure. Yeah. Very common. So from another, yes, very little self-compassion for myself, because I don't feel I'm contributing enough, yet no focus because of so many interests. This is interesting because the contributing could be kind of like accomplishing or learning. There could be the accomplishing, learning, and then contributing, these kinds of different things that we feel we want to do so much of and can't. So there's a question about higher education. So the question is, how do you get PhDs? Don't you get frustrated at the transparency of the system? And then higher degrees demand so much of a narrower focus when I so much want to bring in something from another field. Yeah.
So what's the question? About
higher education, sort of how can you narrow down your focus to, let's say, get a PhD, and how can you deal with the transparency of the system? I mean, when you want to bring something else in, but the system is like closed. The system is what it is, and unless you get a really good professor, as you talked about in the teenage example, in Justin's example, he got the great teacher that open things up for him, but that's not the common case. I've worked with lots of PhD students over the years. That's not the common case.
Yeah, right. And so I'll just share a couple of thoughts, and then you all can chime in. But yeah, it's I haven't heard great things about people who are looking for PhDs or in PhD programs, and the narrowness is one thing. I haven't heard of any real great interdisciplinary programs. I've had people who are in college at all levels and are frustrated by the lack of challenge and the lack of interdisciplinary studies or interdisciplinary awareness. I told one person she wasn't in a PhD program, it was an undergrad or a graduate program. If you could just find, there might be one professor somewhere in there who gets you and who loves how, rainforesty you are. And then I told that client, go to those office hours, spend time with that person, let that person be your mentor to help you get through the program. And that was helpful to her. But does anybody have good experiences in PhD programs where they have been? I mean, because I wonder, here's a question. I wonder if, there are some gifted people who don't have multi-potentiality. So they're able to focus and pick a narrow subject and go into depth in it and be happy there. And I don't know if that's the scholarly gifted person or the more just they're a linear sequential type of gifted person, or they just don't have the multi-potentiality, so it's not as tricky, or there's not as much creativity, there's more of the cognitive development happening. And I'd be interested in hearing from the rest of you. So because I think that somebody in a program, in a PhD program would have giftedness or would have a level of intelligence. But anyway, so I'm curious to see what the rest of you think about that.
So we have some other points so I'm going to be a little all around, just following the different comments we're getting. Oh, here's somebody responding to this exact question. So I used to do a PhD on a field straddling theme, but both fields just couldn't get any of it. So that's not a positive experience. And then a recommendation of a book by, why did you have to write this name? I can't say it. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, right, exactly, about flow, that speaks about creative types across any discipline needing to be interdisciplinary. So that would be an interesting read, I think, for a lot of people considering this issue, questioning this issue, especially in academia. Another subject is about anger, longstanding anger, in dealing with a world that doesn't understand or care. What would you say to that?
I think it's important to what's the word I want to I'm thinking validate it. I understand that it's appropriate to have anger at this. I mean, it's not, you're not out of line to feel upset and angry and frustrated with the world that doesn't get you. And I think one idea, I had a client, we were talking about anger this week, and what are the ways you can safely express your anger, release your anger, whether it's in a journal. Some people like to write, if it's in a journal writing or drawing, or turning it into art in some form. Feeling that sometimes it's rage. I mean, you can really be deeply upset by this experience of being this gifted person in this kind of crazy world, where you're not understood. And if you have what I call chainsaw parents, if you grew up in a dysfunctional family as well, then there might be some real anger that you've never been able to express because of the dysfunctional family story that you grew up in. So finding safe ways to express it, and then I would say finding a safe person. If you're feeling like this anger is overwhelming and it's taking you over, or it's just too much, and I would look for a therapist. I would look for a coach or a practitioner. And if you're, I've seen someone who does Reiki and energy work, and so there are broad ranges of different types of practitioner that could help. But for the anger, if it just feels really intense, I guess I want to validate it and say, yes, it makes sense that you have it, and then give you some kind of safe place where you can talk about it and express it. Anybody else have any ideas about that?
I would also add that there's a moment, I think, when you can kind of be within yourself with it, or within a small circle with it, and once you have enough understanding, there seems to be this moment where, and I've seen it with clients and with myself, there seems to be this moment where then you don't have the shame about your anger anymore, and you can get out in the world with it. So, I mean, my anger is a lot of the reason I started InterGifted. My anger about, having to hide myself for a lot of my life and having to hide what my brain's really like, and not having the words for it and not having the social support. So my anger has led to a lot of positive change. So I didn't run around saying, isn't everybody else stupid or anything of that nature. I just said, hey, I'm angry about not being able to express myself. I'm angry that my clients every day tell me they don't feel safe to express themselves. I'm going to make a place where everybody's safe to express themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
yeah.
it is
Yes.
can be a huge motivator for positive social change.
Mm-hmm.
As well. I mean, I don't think that's the first step. I had a lot of support to get there, a lot from my mentors and also coaching and therapy. So it wasn't just like one day I decided, okay, I'm sick of feeling this way. I'm going to start a big organization. There were lots and lots of steps in between. So anybody listening, don't tell yourself, oh, okay, because then the gifted brain is going to typically say, oh, I should do that tomorrow too, or something as big. So no, it takes time, and it is a little bit linear. But you're right, Paula. I think the first step is really to find a safe place to talk about it and find a safe way to express it, even with yourself, journaling or whatever. Find a way to sort of start getting in touch with it.
And the other thing I would add would be if you're feeling depressed, sometimes depression, you don't want to feel the anger. Yeah. So you shut it down and instead you're depressed. So you might want to look for some anger underneath the depression. Because that's the anger in a way is empowering. There's an energy in it that can then turn into, like what Jen said, into something you do. But so I would also say that a lot of people that I see just feel that depression and look underneath it, and maybe there's some anger that you can work with.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, before we take any other questions, I'm looking at the time, so I want to make sure that we just have a couple of minutes to ask any questions about your book, if anybody has any specific questions about the book. I know that we're skipping over some people's questions, and sorry, if we had 10 hours, I'm sure we would still have questions that went unanswered with our group, right? But thank you all for participating and sharing. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any questions about Paula's book from anybody?
I see a question. I don't know where this came from. Do you see that question?
Yeah, I do, but I know why. Hold on, I'm going to respond to that question in a private talk. It's because she arrived late. So she thought you were talking about yourself. She thought your monologue was about you. No.
Oh.
I'll just correct there. No, the monologue was about somebody else, not about her. Paula knows she's gifted.
Well, actually, the monologue was not about me, but I will share this just because, I love you all. It's an ongoing, how we teach what we need to learn. It's an ongoing issue for me just because, the way I describe it is this. There's a spectrum of giftedness, right? Not everyone who is gifted is a genius or profoundly gifted. And I see a lot of gifted people. Over these years, I've seen many, many gifted people. So I see what it looks like. And I do think that I'm on the kind of the barely gifted end of the continuum. You're moderately gifted, you're profoundly gifted, you're genius, and so I'm sort of, but and I really don't. That's not me being humble. That's really me knowing what it looks like. But I am really good at understanding it and working with clients who are that way. And maybe if I were really severely gifted, I wouldn't be as good at at doing the counseling. I don't know. But so
maybe you need a session with Jen.
No, if anything, I'd need a session with Paula.
This is just clarifying her giftedness.
Yeah, right. Clarifying your level
just
of giftedness.
Just as far as clarifying your giftedness.
No, but this is a really interesting point. that I see a lot in making positive change in the world, and I work very, very much with clients on, is that where you are sort of on the scale of from profoundly to mildly gifted, we all really are working in some ways. This might sound strange, as a team. So some that are more profoundly gifted should probably work mostly with people that are somewhat in their region, so highly, exceptionally, and so on, to have their most profound effect. And they really shouldn't necessarily be trying to work with non-gifted people. I mean, if they're looking to make positive social change. And they shouldn't be necessarily working most directly with non-gifted people or mildly gifted, because they're going to find that same frustration that they found, as kids or whatever, trying to make positive change. And instead work most closely with people that are, let's say, at their speed, if I can use that language. And then those people, so it's kind of like a domino effect, then the people a little bit, it's not lower, but at the next step, then are able to have a clear communication with the people at the next step and the people at the next step. So when people, for example, are just learning about giftedness, it's actually really nice for them to talk to somebody who is mildly gifted, mildly or moderately gifted. Because for a profoundly gifted person, it might be really hard to translate into sort of simple linear language. I mean, maybe after years of work, it could be easier, but there's this sort of domino effect. And I like to point that out for people because it really helps them to understand that they don't have to change the whole world. They just kind of have to, show their influence in their zone, so to speak. And then that will have its ripple effects out. And it takes a lot of the pressure off. I mean, I know what everybody's talking about, the pressure to perform and the pressure to do amazing things in the world and make great change and stuff. And to reduce that pressure, it really is interesting. We do all need each other. I can't work with everybody in the world. I have to work with people who are similar enough to me, and then they can work with other people who are similar enough to them, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense the way I just described it.
Anyone else have anything to share? Kind of about anything, really, because we're running out of time.
We're actually just about out of time. So I'd like to just make a few closing comments so that people can know how to follow up with you and follow up with your work and where to find your book and everything, and give a few little announcements. So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you, and it's a huge emotional thank you. If I wasn't in front of the camera, I'd go sit and cry in my bed for a little bit just to let out all the emotion. It's very, very touching and very moving to hear what you say, and very affirming. I think for anybody who's done any sort of inner child work, I can imagine that they're especially touched by what you talked about tonight, because the giving words to that inner child's experience, like Ricky said, we've read all of the theories and such, and that's all nice, but to give words like that to that inner experience that we've had, it's really moving. And what I want to say to everybody, if you haven't read Paula's book yet, you'll get more of that. It's a whole book of that. Not monologues per se, but the style and the feeling is that. And when you're reading her book, you're laughing, you're crying, you're totally identifying with her clients. And Paula's style is so warm and so eclectic. You'll find that your questions are answered in all these little bursts like this, and you feel like, oh, the world is opening up. I can explore that. There's this resource. There's that, and so there's this wonderful opening of the mind and the heart and the body all at once. So thank you for all the work that you've done. I'm gonna get emotional again, but thank you so much for all the work you've done for all of us over the years, and for giving a voice to a lot of us who have been sort of hiding in the closet. Yeah. So I get over my tears. Sorry, everybody. So you can find Paula's book at Amazon.com, and you can read much more of her work on her blog, which is yourrainforestmind.wordpress.com, correct?
Just Rainforest Mind.
Oh, rainforestmind.wordpress.com.
Yeah.
WordPress.com. You can learn more about her work as a therapist at rainforestmind.com. And since she's in our Facebook group, of course, obviously, if you have questions you want to ask her, and if we want to get a dialogue going about this in the Facebook group, in the discussions, I think it would be great. You've had so many questions that we haven't been able to respond to in this 1 hour and 20 minutes. And so feel free to reach out in the Facebook group, and Paula's always very responsive and has great things to say there. So thank you again, Paula. Let's see, just my final little notes. So thanks to everybody who came and joined us tonight and for participating and sharing openly. It's interesting because as you share, what you don't realize is people will watch this recording and they will get so much strength and so much courage from hearing you talk and or hearing me share your questions and your thoughts. So thank you for being open to that as well. Paula mentioned therapy or coaching. She is a therapist. She is available to have sessions, mostly in Oregon.
Right.
Mostly in
Only,
Portland.
I should say only in Oregon, because I'm only licensed in Oregon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you happen to be in Oregon, contact her. If you're not, and you'd like to think about getting therapy or mostly coaching, you can email us at coaching@intergifted.com. And Nikki Peterson or I will connect you to one of our wonderful coaches who specialize in giftedness. And if you'd like to just say thanks to us for putting this talk together, and thanks to Paula for this, you can send us a donation. It can be small, but we appreciate it. And that's at paypal.me/intergifted, or you can go on our website and you find more information about that. And then, so I have an exciting little announcement that we will start a very, very interesting series in the fall, and that's when our next Coaching Network talk will take place. There'll be a talk with Nikki Peterson, and we're going to be focusing on really daring to speak up about who you are as a gifted person. So overcoming the shame of saying the word gifted, or overcoming the shame of expressing who you are. We're going to have some really interesting courses about that and have a whole little campaign about that. So I'm very excited to share that with you. You'll have to stay tuned for more information on that. So you'll see it in our newsletter and in the Facebook group and everything else. So if anybody has any last little questions, now's the time. Otherwise, we will close the call. I think you can see, Paula, everybody's saying on the chat, thank you so much, thank you so much. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen, for setting this up and letting me do this. And it's been emotional for me too. And I think we don't need to apologize for our emotions, right? That's part of what makes us who we are.
Yeah, indeed.
So thank you all so much for coming.
Thanks, everybody.